All right, so I hope everybody's doing well, that you had a good weekend. I owe you a video from last Thursday. So I don't know how I managed to do it, but as you know, I record our sessions and then I post them on the YouTube channel and the um, link to the YouTube channel from our Canvas course page, and I forgot to do that, but I plan to do it this evening. Otherwise, if I'm not mistaken, I think we are pretty much on track with our schedule. Let me confirm that by taking a quick look. Right. Okay. So here's the plan. We were anticipating last week the work we are going to be doing this week. Specifically, we were anticipating the intro and elim rules for the conditional and the biconditional. So what we'll be doing today is going through those rules together, generating some strategies and or discussing strategies, and then I'll generate some exercises for us for practice. Then next week we have spring break, and then the week after that we are just going to focus Tuesday, Thursday on reviewing for our third exam, which we can take. You can take it pretty much any time, but that we want to take sometime before Sunday of is that the 18th? I think that's right. Anyway, so the basic idea is that we will, in exam 3, we will pull forward the work we were doing in the Boolean system into the complete system of natural deduction. Okay, so that means we're including the conditional and biconditional work. Anyway, so does anybody have questions, problems, confusions, anything that they want to get to before we jump back in? What do you think? So far, so good? Okay. I'm going to take silence as approval. All right. So our handy dandy whiteboard is up, and let me just remind ourselves of the chapter. Okay. So we're now we're now into the rules for the conditional and the biconditional. So that's chapters 18, or sections from chapters 18 and 19. So rules for the conditional and biconditional. And let's use as our guiding ideas thinking about these rules as providing strategies for completing a proof and tactics for moves. So a strategy is going to be like a blueprint, a general plan for deriving the conclusion from the premises. That means then that our subproof rules are our strategic rules. They give us a blueprint, a template, a plan for connecting the dots, right? And then the actual dot connection is taken up by our tactics. So think again about subproof rules as your strategic rules, and then think about every other rule as a tactical rule. Think also about the fact that we're just involved in the process of disassembling or assembling, That is, eliminating or introducing connectives. Okay? So first, let us take a look at what we do when we want to generate a conditional claim. Oh, why did I write R? I don't know. And why did I not give myself room to write the rule? Sorry. Conditional intro. So you assume P, derive Q, therefore if P then Q, right? So assume, derive. And then we have the conditional elim. If P then Q, P therefore Q. Another way that we could present the conditional elim rule would be to, to draw a line, right? You can also draw that vertical line if you want, but what I don't want us to do, since we don't typically use the vertical lines in the presentation of the main line or main spine of a derivation, is to use the vertical line. I don't want you to mistake that for a subproof. And then we have biconditional intro. So P, derive Q, assume Q, derive P, exit the subproof, and conclude P if and only if Q. So assume, derive, assume, derive. Now, I hope what you're seeing with the biconditional intro rule is the fact that similarly to the disjunction elimination rule, you have two successive subproof sequences, right? So assume P, derive Q, assume Q, derive P. They're separate subproof sequences. They occur, however, on the same line, right? They're not, one's not nested within the other. And that's the same format as we see with the disjunction elimination rule. But remember here, we're not eliminating a disjunction. We're not proving some sentence from either side of a disjunction. Rather, we are introducing or generating or proving a conditional, a biconditional, forgive me, right? We're proving a biconditional. So it's not like we're starting with a biconditional that we're disassembling. That rule, biconditional elim, looks very much like conditional elim, except that because it's a two-way conditional, right? When you have P if and only if Q, it doesn't matter which side you affirm, you derive the other side. So notice the difference between the conditional elim, affirmation of the antecedent, right? And the biconditional elim, take a look at the second version of the biconditional elim where the Q is affirmed, right? You're not affirming the consequent there, right? Because remember, the biconditional says if P then Q and if Q then P. So Q serves as both a necessary and sufficient condition, which means that Q does appear on the left side of the arrow in the larger framework of the sentence, right? So remember, I'll just draw it here really quick. P arrow Q and Q arrow P, that's equivalent to the biconditional. Hence, think about the following. When you have P arrow Q and Q arrow P, You can eliminate the conjunction, and if you happen to have Q, you can then eliminate the conditional, right, by conditional elim. So when you have the two-way arrow, having Q, if Q happens to be the antecedent, if Q is any sentence, right, that is in the necessary and the consequent, necessary and sufficient position, that when affirmed allows you to draw the other side. That was really convoluted, that last bit. I apologize. All right, looking at the rules. Do you say, yeah, this looks familiar? Do you want to look at the truth table for each of these? I think we worked the truth table for one of them, but you'll notice if you plug these into a truth table where you are just completing each of the rows of the truth table. In other words, I'm thinking of that as opposed to the indirect truth table, right? You'll see there's no row on which the premises are true and the conclusion is false. Okay. Victoria, what are you thinking?
I have a question. So when we do a biconditional elim, you wrote or. I think it should be and. Why it's or?
Are you okay? Sorry, you're looking at what's in green.
No, I mean not in green, but I look on what is black because it's P. If P, then and only then Q, and after that or.
Oh.
I thought it should be and. Oh no.
Oh, sure. So think about the or this way. The or is it's at least one or the other. It could be both, right? It's the or in this sense serves as an alternative. So why don't I do this if it makes it clearer? Hold on just 1 second. And sorry, I get what you're saying now. Hold on just 1 second. So we can do this. Or I should make the color the same. Right? So you don't have to do, I think, is this what actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is this what you're asking? Are you asking if the biconditional elim rule demands that you have both P and Q in order? No. Oh, I see what you're saying. No. In fact, so this is an alternative. It's not that you need to have both. The rule is exhibited fine in its first iteration. Remember that in these rules, the letters P and Q stand for any sentence in the universe, right? So it doesn't, and then the reason why I've given you the alternative is it doesn't matter which side of the biconditional is affirmed. You can derive the other side. Am I getting at what you want, or did I just make it worse? I was being really convoluted earlier, so for all I know, I've just made it worse. Thoughts? So think about it this way, Victoria. When you have a biconditional, it doesn't matter if you affirm the left side of the biconditional or you affirm the right side of the biconditional. You can, whichever side you affirm gets you the other.
Yeah, thank you. I understand it. Yeah, it's great because I totally understand what you.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. And I'm sorry that I messed you up before. I really appreciate you asking for that clarification. All right, so let me give you some examples, right? As always, have your rule sheet with you. It doesn't matter if you printed out the rule sheet that I provide. I originally, I think, gave you just the Boolean rules. Then I gave you another sheet, or then there is another sheet already that has both the Boolean and conditional and biconditional rules on a single sheet. That said, you could write all of the rules on a single sheet yourself. It doesn't matter how you have them. Just make sure that you get that you have it with you. That's going to be really important. All right, so because I won't be able to have it up while we're working. All right, so how about this? All right. So here's an argument. Okay, so we have two premises. If A, then B. Premise 2 says not B, and the conclusion is so, not A. So let's remind ourselves of some steps we go through to get to sort of organize our thinking. One is we look at what's given to us in the conclusion and we see, the conclusion is a negated sentence. A go-to strategy when your conclusion is a negated sentence is assume the conclusion is false, generate a contradiction, exit the subproof, right? So here's a strategy, negation intro, right? Now look at your premises. You're given an arrow. You're given a conditional. This is always what you do. And I say always, even though that's not actually true, there are going to be occasions where you do not eliminate the conditional. There are extenuating reasons for that. But this is your go-to. When you see a conditional, when you're given a conditional, eliminate it, eliminate it, eliminate it. We know that the only way to eliminate a conditional is to have the antecedent. So I'm boxing up A because we don't have the antecedent, we want it. We need the antecedent so that we can infer the consequent. Okay? What else do we notice when we look at our premises? We see a contradiction. Right? But the contradiction right now is implicit. We need to make it explicit. How do we make the contradiction explicit? Right? We must eliminate the conditional. So now we see, we've got our strategy. Okay, before laying it out, what's your thought? Does what I'm saying make sense? Don't be shy about saying, no, Mia, it doesn't. Or I had you until this point, or whatever. Questions, problems, confusions, comments. So far, so good? All right, so let's go ahead and assume A. We want our contradiction so that we can exit the subproof and say, by negation intro, it's not the case that A. And remember, it's, with shorter proofs, you might not think you need to write what your strategy is, but do it anyway, because as the derivations get longer, you don't want to forget by the time you get to line 18 or 19 or whatever it is, you don't want to forget how you started, right? What your point was. So you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm setting up negation intro. We've already completed the proof, by the way, off to the side. We said we needed A, so, oh, here is A. So assume A, right? We said that in order to eliminate the, in order to generate the contradiction, to make the contradiction explicit, we need to eliminate the eliminate the conditional. Now we're ready to do it, right? 1 and 3 yield 4. Conditional elim. 1 and 3. Line 5 is our contradiction. We love the contradiction. We're saying, hey, here's the contradiction. Lines 2 and 4. And then at line 6, we're out of our subproof. Lines 3 through 5 get us the conclusion. Does anybody recognize this, by the way? We've worked this derivation before. But now we're doing it with our formal rules, right? We now have in our arsenal of rules in our toolkit, our derivation toolkit, we have more rules, and now we can use them as justifications for the moves that we're making. Thoughts? Okay, you ready to go on? We're just going to grind out a bunch of practice, bunch of examples. And then after we work a bunch of examples, then depending on whether you want to, we can go into the proof machine, but I'm going to start asking you to complete proofs that are constructed and then start coming up with strategies and tactics on your own. So let's keep going. How about this one? Okay, so same conclusion as the last exercise. Notice that negation A appears as the left disjunct from line 1, and it appears as the consequent from line 2. Let's talk about strategies. Well, I'll write them out. We know we must eliminate the disjunction. We know we must eliminate the conditional. And we can use negation intro as our strategy given the conclusion. Okay, so let's try to work it both ways. And what I mean by that is this. We have two strategic options. One strategic option is disjunction elimination, where the conclusion is our goal. The other strategic option is negation intro, where the conclusion is our goal. Well, we just worked negation intro. Let's work disjunction elim. So line 3, assume not A is the goal. Assume B, not A is the goal. so that we can say in either case, not a disjunction elim, starting at line 1 and then 3 through we don't know what. Okay. Question for you. Does it make sense to say that from 3 to 4, easy peasy, right? We're reiterating line 3. Right? So we're good there. The subproof starting at line 5 is trickier, or is it? It's trickier to the extent that you're not just reiterating, but do you have, is it more complicated in terms of numbers of steps? No. Right? What do we think? I want to just take a quick survey. How are you doing? What's your confidence level with these first two and these this last set of rules for the section on natural deduction? Any thumbs up? Excellent. Anybody else? Victoria, good, good. Questions, problems, confusions, comments? Carolyn's thumbs up, good, good. Arshak, Zeba, Daniel, Jasmine, how are you doing? Good, good. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Zeba. All right. So, and then Jasmine, how are you doing? Jasmine might not be able to chat, so I'll let you respond if and when you can. Let's work another version of the proof.
No, that would be fine, and
So here's our second version with a different strategy.
I'm perfectly fine to leave him because we're right down the street. I mean, it doesn't take us 15 minutes to get there.
Okay.
And then
Now, regardless of the fact that we're using negation intro as our strategy, we still have to eliminate, right, the disjunction. But notice the difference between the disjunction elimination that we worked in the first version and what I'm about to do. So here,
and we appreciate that.
I'm assuming the left side,
Say again, I'm sorry.
and
Oh yes, I can bring this.
and then on the right side,
Will do. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye bye.
and then we're out of the subproof, the nested subproof, I should say, and then back out on the main line. So we can color code these if that helps a little bit.
Hi, Dan. Sorry, I was on the other line with our vet. One of our guys needs to. Yeah, well.
All right, so line 5
Pretty intense scrap. Yeah.
is a contradiction intro
And Walter and
from lines 3 and 4.
And we're gonna take Eddie in today because
Line,
his neck is so
oh, sorry, forgive me, I didn't write that line 4 is an assumption. Then line 6 is also an assumption. Line 7 is the dismantling of the elimination, or sorry, the dismantling of the conditional. at 2 by the affirmation of the antecedent at 6.
Yes.
Then line 8 is another contradiction intro.
Okay, well,
And remember, when you are dismantling the disjunction, your conclusion of each of the successive subproof sequences is the same, right? So we're generating a contradiction for each side of the disjunction so that we can say, look, in either case, I have a contradiction. So that's 3 and 7. And then disjunction elim now from the disjunction at line 1, and then 4 through 5, and what was it, 6 through 8? 6 through 8. And then finally, the line 10, our conclusion, is derived from the assumption of A at line 3 and ends with the contradiction at line 9. So this version of the proof is 2 lines longer than the first version. And so from the standpoint of logical elegance, it's, not as clean as the first one. But heck, if you get to where you want to go validly, right, if you correctly use the rules, then you're not fudging anything. Who cares that it takes a couple more lines? I do have a question for you. Which approach do you like better? In fact, I think Jasmine and I were chatting a little bit about this over the weekend, I think, where, oh no, it wasn't Jasmine. Sorry. It was Priscilla. I don't know why I'm confusing Jasmine and Priscilla. Anyway, we were chatting a little bit, and I think it was Priscilla who was saying, I see a disjunction and I think elimination. And so that feels intellectually to her like the go-to, right? So you might say, oh, disjunction elim is, I feel the same way. But some of you might say, hey, I always just look at the conclusion. I want to work backward from the conclusion. I'm going to set up negation intro. Don't care if it costs me a couple more lines. What's your preference? The first version or the second? Tell me what you're thinking. Okay. Yeah, interesting. So Jasmine says, working backward from the conclusion is, in this case, we're talking about a negation intro. Yeah, that's the way to go for Jasmine. For Dominic and Victoria, it's the first. I don't think there's a right way to go. I think even if you say that you prefer, if you have a choice, right, between, let's say, negation intro and disjunction elim, you prefer disjunction elim, you're working backward in either case, right? So we talked a bit about that with the first version, but in the second version, think about it this way. When you made your assumption of A at line 3, you would have seen, there's a contradiction between my assumption and both the consequent of line 2 and the left disjunct at line 1, right? So you're already looking for what you're headed toward, what your goal is. In this case, remember, once you set up your subproof, the conclusion of the subproof is your goal, right? So, this is the goal, just like this nested subproof goal, right, is the same. And in the structuring subproof for the first version, it's the goal is not A. Yeah, and Victoria says the first feels more familiar. Yeah, because so you've known it longer. You've been in a relationship with disjunction elimination longer than you have with negation intro, I think, because we talked about disjunction elim first. All right, how are we doing? Are we ready to move on? And okay, yes, Jasmine, the reiteration rule very often feels to us saying it's not very intuitive or saying it's counterintuitive is a nice way to, to put it, because it feels kind of like we're cheating. What do you mean? I assume it and therefore I have it. But if it helps, when you can think about this in two ways. Regardless of what you assume, you know that you want this conclusion, whatever that conclusion happens to be. So if it just so happens that what you assume is exactly the conclusion you want for a subproof, reiteration is the way to go. Now that's the sort of rules-based kind of almost mercenary thinking, right? But another way to think about it might feel intellectually more robust, which is to say, look, when I assume I have something, it follows that I'm saying I have it, right? To assume it is just to say that, hey, this is what I'm saying I have. So I'm saying that I have it. I don't know if that helps. But good for you, Jasmine, to note to self that it's not as intuitive to you as maybe some of the other rules, right? So, and good for you, because the more you know how your mind works, like if you find yourself getting stuck, note it. Oh, I'm stuck. What am I stuck on? Why am I stuck on this? Because it's probably, the case that there's some other ideas whirring around that you just haven't really brought to full consciousness yet. And once you do that, the confusion is resolved. You at least understand why you're confused, maybe even the manner of confusion. All right, are we ready for another one? Okay. Everything else I said still stands, but let me repeat it because I messed up. All right. So when your conclusion is a conditional, right? Assume the antecedent, derive the consequent, exit the subproof. Because what are you doing except saying at line 3, hey, let's assume that I have R. If I have R, then I have B, which I'm about to prove. Therefore, on the horizontal, if I have R, I have B. Okay, let's do it. So line 4 is, so we've assumed R, and then we've eliminated the conditional at line 1 by affirming the antecedent at line 2. So now we can introduce the conditional. Ha! Right? So line 3 says, if I have R. Line 4 says, then I have B. And line 5 says, okay, I've just proven that if I have R, I have B. What do you think? You love it, right? Let's do another one. And this time I promise I'll be extra careful. By the way, how does this one feel for you? Pretty good? So we've got our conditional intro. We've got our plan for negation intro, right? We can introduce our disjunction, which then gets us our conditional elim, which then gets us our conditional elim. Let me give us a little bit more room here. Which then gets us our contradiction, which then gets us our negation intro, which then, because we already set things up so that we have asserted our conclusion as soon as we've generated the consequent of the sentence we want, we've set up conditional intro. And sorry, I didn't fix the C there. So that was Sorry, that was like a big disaster on my part. I had a complete cognitive meltdown. So we assume, I'll make it up to you. We assume A, and we want to derive not D. Then, in order to derive not D, we assume D, generate a contradiction so that we can get out of the nested subproof and introduce the negation. We then introduced the disjunction. So that we can eliminate the conditional at line 1 by affirming the antecedent at line 5. And I want to talk about that in just a moment. And then once we generate the consequent of line 1, we now have the antecedent of line 2. So we eliminate the conditional at line 2 by affirming the antecedent at line 6. Once we derive not D, we now have a contradiction. And that contradiction is derived from lines 4 and 8. And as soon as we've derived not D, we exit our structuring subproof and we say lines 3 through 9, conditional intro gets us line 10. Let's take a look at line 5. Lots of times people will make the following move. So I'm going to pull line 1 off to the side. Line 1 says, if A or B, then C. And I have A. And lots of times people will say, oh, well, I have A, therefore I can eliminate the conditional, right, and derive C. But you must make it explicit that you have not just A, but that you have A or B. So lots of times you want to think about the following. In order to eliminate my conditional, I've got to sometimes, lots of times, to create the antecedent. Okay, so I'm trying to, if you were already thinking that, I just want to preempt worry about why you can't just pull C down when you have A. You need to assert the entire antecedent. Thoughts, despite the fact that I had conflated my C's and D's. Sorry, I'm going to be even more careful now. How are we doing? Love that one. I apologize. I don't know why. When I originally wrote the thing and didn't leave enough room, I said, yeah, we must assume not A. And then when I rewrote it, giving us more space, I screwed oh my gosh. All I can do is say I apologize. I mean, truly, it is, I can't excuse it. I can explain it, but I'm not going to. It's just horribly wrong. So sorry. I was looking at lines 1 and 8. You were talking about how 8 is actually the negation intro from 5 through 7. That's what you were talking about, right?
That it's 2 parts,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, are you clear? Like, I know that I totally messed up. Is it the case that in fixing things, have I clarified how I confused you? And this is not just for Victoria, this is for everybody. But Victoria, have I clarified things?
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Ruth. I understand.
I apologize. Okay, thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Jasmine. Just so you know, I'm going to have to edit that out for posting this so that any class member who comes to see it doesn't have to suffer the way that you guys have. But please know that I do not mean to make you suffer. The only thing that might be worthwhile in what just happened is this. There are times when I see things that aren't there, right? So I thought I was seeing something that wasn't actually there. And what Victoria was saying was correct, and I was seeing, I wasn't seeing how things were actually laid out. I don't know why. I can't explain why. Okay, so what we've got then from 5, so we had not A, then D. In order to get D, we needed not A, but we didn't have it, so we assumed it. So one way you can think about it's working forward, which isn't which isn't great for us to do all the time. But one way we could see using working forward as a nice way of going is when we say, hey, I want something, but I don't have it in order to get this other thing. So let me assume it. You can assume whatever you want, but you're always going to have to pay it back. Okay. All right. So we assumed it, and then we were able to eliminate the conditional, and that's lines, what was it, 2 and 5, and then at line 7 the contradiction intro. Where did that come from, everybody? Where did the contradiction intro come from? Yeah, beautiful, Dominic. 4 and 6. Okay. Okay, so thank goodness my terribly abusive behavior, in other words, messing up so badly, having a cognitive meltdown, not once, but twice, not twice, but 3 times, has not dissuaded you, yay, from the work. The great news is it sounds to me from what you're writing and what you're saying that you've got a good enough handle on the system such that if I mess up, you can correct it, right? You don't have to be a victim of my mess ups. All right, so then once we've gotten out of that subproof and we've got A, how did we get B conjunction C? So here's what we've used so far. We've used 2 and 5. We've used 4 and 6. What else do we need to do? So how do we get B conjunction C? Well, where in our premises does the sentence B conjunction C appear?
Conditional lim.
Beautiful. Conditionally lim. 1 and 8, right? Because remember, we have to reiterate, or we have to affirm the antecedent. And when you're working by hand, this line 7 just gets us out of the subproof. When you're working by hand, it's not a bad idea to check off or cross off lines as you use them. It doesn't mean you won't use that line again. It can be the case that you use a premise multiple times, but crossing it off, striking it off means, at least I've used it once, right? And you'll always use your premises at least once. How about line 10? Where did that come from? We haven't used 3, but it's not the case that we can just pull the negation off. So yes, Jasmine is exactly right. We eliminate the conjunction from line 9. Now we're in a position, take a look at 3 and 10. To introduce the contradiction. And then we've already filled in the remainder of our, because we were originally working backward. We've already filled in the remainder of our citations and justifications. So yes, really good work, despite my best efforts to screw things up. Let me get another one, and this time I don't care how much space I make, I'm not going to rewrite it and then mess up. So hold on to this one. Okay. I really can't explain what's happening to me today, but it's not good. And I'll just have a standing apology. I'm having perceptual problems. I can't make sense of what it is that I'm looking at. So it's really bizarre. All right, so I hope you can see this okay. I kept erasing, trying to make it visually clearer, and then I was not seeing what I was doing. So then the derivation itself was getting all messed up. So I don't know what my problem is, but okay. So we've got 2 assumptions, one right after the other, right? And then we've got, so that means we've got a subproof and then a nested subproof. The nested subproof ends with a contradiction, right? And then we have another double nested subproof, right? And then I hope it's clear that you see we've got, so if I color code these, right, the green are on the same line, right? And the blue are on the same line. And sorry, before I forget, there's just the one triple nested subproof, but before I forget, let me write assume. Okay, so here's what we should do. I will obviously I'll post this along with the other whiteboard notes, except the stuff that I screwed up on, because that just won't. I'm going to edit that out of the video, and that will. So there's no point in posting what I edited out. But if you want to copy this one down, then on Thursday we'll pick up with this. If you can complete this on your own, awesome. We'll just review our strategies and our tactics. And then I will try to be in good cognitive shape so that I don't have the total meltdowns that I had, several times today. So again, apologies for those, but I do hope that despite those issues, it's still clear to you, that we've got 2 new strategies to add to our existing strategies. So the 2 new strategies are the conditional intro and the biconditional intro. Conditional intro is a subproof rule. Biconditional intro is a subproof rule. We use these when we want to generate or make a conditional or a biconditional. Note also that the biconditional is a 2 subproof rule, just like the disjunction elim is a 2 subproof rule. So now we have a total of 4 strategies. We have disjunction elim, negation intro, conditional intro, biconditional intro. And we use those to as strategies for blueprints for a proof. Okay? So let me know if you have questions, problems, confusions, and I'll do my best to not have a meltdown again. Victoria, what are you thinking?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's about this one. Should we do line number 18 with our conclusion? Because we have like 2 subproof and no like final conclusion.
Oh,
Yes or no?
yeah, no, so, hey, just to top off my abject failure today, we need, did I never write this? I don't think I ever wrote this. I thought I wrote that. I didn't, did I not? Right? So 18 is G if and only if I. Yeah, I swear I thought I wrote that at the very end. Clearly I did not. It's not a good day for me. I am not having a good day thinking I apologize again. Victoria, thank you for that. Are you better now? Are you feeling better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, if it weren't for you, I'd leave us without exiting that subproof. I got nothing, guys. I'm just going to chalk it up to a bad day. Let's pretend like this never happened, and I'll see you on Thursday. Well, we'll keep the good stuff. How's that? But we'll get rid of everything else. All right. Thanks, everybody.